In earlier modules, you learned background information about U.S. citizenship, including terminology of types of immigration statuses. You developed your awareness about U.S. citizenship policies and procedures and resources available to support students and families with preparing for the naturalization test. You also learned about the importance of becoming a U.S. citizen, including the values and benefits that go along with it. In this module, you're going to learn how to navigate the naturalization process. In this module, you'll develop a basic understanding of U.S. naturalization eligibility requirements and the naturalization process. You will also learn about some common mistakes made by candidates for naturalization. As a result of this learning, you should be able to identify the steps of the naturalization process, understand eligibility requirements, and provide students and families with a list of common errors to avoid. We encourage you, as always, to refer students and families to reliable resources about naturalization so they can get expert legal counsel on these matters. Here is an overview of the naturalization process. While the USCIS website describes the process in 10 detailed steps, we've condensed the process into 5 key points for you to consider as you gain an introductory understanding of the naturalization process. The first step is for an individual to check their eligibility for naturalization. We will cover this step in more detail on the next slide. The USCIS resources provide detailed guidance on both preparation and submission of the application for naturalization. Please refer applicants of your acquaintance to the most recently updated version of the USCIS's instructions on these steps available online to ensure that they are working from accurate and current information. After an application for naturalization has been submitted and cleared initial review, the applicant will be contacted and scheduled for a biometrics appointment. During the appointment, applicants will be fingerprinted and photographed for the purpose of background checks. Following a successful background check, a naturalization interview is scheduled at which the ability of most applicants to read, write, and speak in English is assessed. Most applicants are also required to pass a civics test, at which they verbally demonstrate a foundational knowledge of U.S. history, government, and geography. Having completed this interview, the applicant is notified of the decision of the USCIS officer with whom they spoke. Candidates granted approval move on to step number 5. Applicants whose interview is deemed unsuccessful, on the other hand, are not usually limited to one attempt. If an applicant fails to demonstrate to the satisfaction of the officer an ability to understand, speak, read, or write English, or if an applicant does not pass the civics portion of the interview, they may be scheduled for another attempt after a waiting period, during which they are expected to study in the areas deemed lacking. If this happens to someone you know, remember that there are many civics, reading, and writing study materials available on the USCIS website you can share with anyone requiring more practice in these areas. Once an applicant has successfully interviewed for naturalization, they are required to take the oath of allegiance. Occasionally, an applicant's moral or religious convictions may interfere with their ability to formally swear an oath or to agree to certain subsections of the oath of allegiance. In such cases, it may be possible for the applicant to take a modified version of the oath or decline to swear to a specific section. A written explanation of their rationale and other supporting documentation is generally required for such a request to be approved. Applicants who doubt they can take the oath of allegiance in its unmodified form should be advised to seek official legal counsel. This slide lists the general eligibility requirements for naturalization. Many of these requirements have been covered in other modules, such as being a lawful permanent resident for 3 to 5 years. Steps applicants must take to complete the naturalization process, such as completing an interview with the USCIS, were addressed on the previous slide. This slide recaps the requirements we have discussed and includes a few other considerations to take into account, such as the requirement that applicants demonstrate consistent physical presence in the U.S. during their time as green card holders. Feel free to pause the video here and familiarize yourself more thoroughly with this list of general eligibility requirements. Recall, however, that your role is not to present yourself as an expert on this topic to immigrants interested in naturalization. Instead, familiarizing yourself with this information should equip you to more efficiently point people toward the relevant parts of the USCIS.gov website, where they can determine for themselves whether they meet eligibility requirements and can take steps to seek out legal counsel as needed. There are several mistakes people commonly make before or while applying for naturalization. If you are aware of these mistakes, you can help your students avoid them. The top 4 bullets are actions people need to avoid, especially getting in trouble with the law. As the law varies from country to country and even from state to state, it is important for everyone in your community to have access to current and accurate information regarding rules and regulations they must follow as residents of this state. You're encouraged to discuss identifying reliable resources on national, state, and local laws with your students. Asking your students to regularly consult reliable resources of information on the law and consider how the law applies to them specifically can help immigrant families. In particular, avoid getting into situations that could complicate or endanger their eligibility for naturalization. The last 6 bullet points on this slide under the heading "Not" describe actions that immigrants in this country should take throughout their time in the United States, but frequently overlooked or neglect to do. An important point to consider, especially if you are working with students at the high school level, is that the government requires most young men in this country to register for the Selective Service. With few exceptions, U.S. residents assigned male at birth must register for the Selective Service on turning 18. Failing to register is a common oversight that can complicate applications for naturalization. Anyone wondering whether they might be exempt from this requirement should consult the list of Selective Service exemptions provided on the USCIS website. It is also common for immigrants eligible for naturalization to put off applying for citizenship far longer than necessary. In the case of some of your students, it may be useful to know that if parents naturalize as U.S. citizens before their non-citizen child turns 18, their child will in turn typically be eligible for citizenship by acquisition. Once an immigrant in the U.S. turns 18, this particular route to citizenship is no longer available. But students of yours who are 18 or older may be eligible for naturalization and should be encouraged to apply as soon as possible, even if they have no children of their own. The longer someone eligible to apply for naturalization waits to begin the process, the more complicated the application and associated documentation tends to become. Processing someone's personal history generally takes longer and requires more paperwork the older they get, as international travels, marriages, divorces, children, taxes, brushes with the law, and so on can accumulate over time. The earlier someone submits their application, the simpler the overall process is likely to be for that person. Educators play a crucial role in increasing students' awareness that the best time to apply for citizenship is as soon as someone is able. We encourage you to stress to your students and their families the importance of applying as soon as they are eligible to do so. As mentioned in previous modules, educators can help people prepare for the English language and civics knowledge portions of the naturalization interview, especially by providing access to instructional materials, and they can direct them to the USCIS website to determine whether the applicant is eligible for any fee waivers or other types of conditional support or exemptions. Seeking out reliable, current information and legal counsel is critical to avoiding mistakes and ensuring the naturalization process goes smoothly. This slide underscores the importance of encouraging eligible immigrants to apply for citizenship as soon as possible. You can see that the majority of citizens who naturalized in 2023 were between the ages of 30 and 44 years old, although many were eligible to apply earlier. We want to make sure that students and other eligible immigrants, such as some students' parents, submit their applications for naturalization as soon as possible so that they have full access to school or community resources available to them throughout the process, and so that they're able to complete the process with as few complications as possible. Now is a good time for you to review resources on the USCIS website relevant to the naturalization process. There are several resources available, and the Reliable Resources handout has been curated for you and is hyperlinked to bring you directly to those resources. We encourage you to share these with students, families, colleagues, and other community members who may find them useful. In this module, we have overviewed the basic steps immigrants must take to be naturalized as U.S. citizens, discussed eligibility requirements, and listed some of the mistakes people should take care to avoid making before or during the process. To self-check your learning, please complete the comprehensions found directly below this video.